Vacation? What's going on?
Mati's on vacation. Mati's in Victoria Lake. He usually comes in the morning. Shmuel comes still. Akiva's also away. And I think Shlomi Feintuch is away. And Chaim Fear is away.
I'm also away.
And you're also. So it reminds me of a story that I once heard from Rabbi Felder about how one must be steady. One must be the same Jew wherever he is. And he said over a story about Ben Torah in Gaman, who was very, very stressed out, and he needed to get away. So he decides he's booking himself a vacation to Barbados. And he gets onto the airplane, in his black jacket and his black pants and his black hat, as a yeshiva bocher. And as they're getting towards the destination, he goes into the washroom, and 5 minutes later, out pops this cool guy in Bermuda shorts and a tank top and shades, and Yankel's gone. Jack's here for the next week. And he lands the plane lands, and he goes to get his luggage, and as he's running and reaching out to get the attention of a taxi cab, he gets knocked over by a truck, and he's lying flat on the floor in front of the airport in 1,000 pieces. And he reaches his hands up to Shemayim and he says, "Rebbeinu Shalom, I didn't even do one Aveira yet." And the Baskel comes out from Shemayim and says, "Yaakov, is that you? We could hardly recognize you."
I heard that story from Rabbi Kurzner, actually. They must learn it in rabbi school or something. And it wasn't Barbados, it was Las Vegas.
Oh. So that was the voice I heard. Reb Felder was speaking by a simcha, and he was trying to make a point that this Yid who he was talking about is very steady, and he never, changes the way he behaves, no matter where he is. Okay, so let's see where we are up to. We were up to Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Yosy we're up to. So this is the shaila that we were discussing. We had a question. Which Abaya asked Rabba on the Mem Beis Amud Aleph. And what he asked Rabba was, if someone said Anastu Fetisa Spiti and Vamidaticha Bedin, there was a machloek that since it's kanas, since the tashlumin of oinis and mafata are kanas, therefore, if someone approaches his friend and says, "You owe me because you were ma'anas my daughter," and the person denies it, and he makes a shvua. So normally, if it was a regular moment, if the person is moida later on that he swore falsely about the money that he denied, he would have to bring a carbon shvur. However, this is in the case of oinus and mefata, who's only asking for a knas. So over there is no chiyuv to bring a carbon shvur, because even if he admits it now, he's still potter, because because moed is potter. That was the halacha. The shaila was, which Abai asked Rabbi.
I didn't want to stop you yesterday because you were in a flow, but there are a few things I didn't understand. First of all, I never heard of a carbon shvua. You never bring carbonas if you do something b'mezid, right? He lied.
Sometimes you do.
What?
Sometimes you do. For instance, if someone, the carbon oil of the earth is often for a mezid. One of the reasons why you bring a carbon oil of the earth is if someone tells you you saw something, and they need you to come say testimony, and you make a shvua that you didn't see something, and then it turns out you did, so you're chayiv to bring a carbon oil. Shivcha charufa, asham shivcha charufa. If someone has relations with a shivcha charufa, he brings a Hashem Shukla Harufa. That's also amazing.
Okay, so I didn't know that. All right, so my next question before you go on, since nobody's here.
Hold on a second. I'm here, Dave. How you let Yosy get away with that? That first case, he was still a shaygig. He didn't know that he didn't see. He didn't know it.
I thought he did. Yosy seemed to suggest that he did know that he didn't see.
He didn't know.
If you were a witness to something, how could it be that you didn't know and then later on you did know? I don't understand.
Yeah, I thought I didn't see it, and then you came in and pointed out, oh, I did.
Thought I saw it pretty that.
Yeah.
That's right. I thought I
The
saw
case
one,
is-
I didn't,
Yes,
and then you
you
pointed
saw Edus. The cases you saw Edus and you refused to come to testimony and you swore falsely, knowing that you really could have said Edus and you didn't. That's one of the reasons why we're being required.
How's that an oil of v'yoyret? That's not an oil of v'yoyret.
We can look
That's
it up.
an oil of v'yoyret.
Yeah, we can look it up in the rules. That's one of the reasons why we bring another here. No. Yeah,
Okay, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Okay, so I didn't know how to answer that, but anyway, second question. So Adam Kam, the guy, he testified one way. He denied. I don't know. Yeah, he testified. So he denied doing it, right? Being the mafata or the ma'anis, and then Adam come. Adam come, and then he admits.
No, Adam don't come. No, never do Adam come.
Isn't it proved? Is it not proved that he was the mafata or the ma'anis?
The chiyuv of Hashem Gezelos is if someone comes and tells me, Simon, you owe me $1,000, and I say I don't, and I swear that I don't, and then I on my own come and say I did.
Okay, so that makes more sense. I understood that the Adam came and where the Adam came, and then he admitted, and then he's putter. After admitting it, he's putter. That's what I understood you saying.
Oh, so then I was not clear.
So that's not the case. Okay. So that makes more sense. Okay.
So to get back to where we were saying, so if someone tells Reuben, you owe me knas of oinus or of mafata, and he says, la adam, I don't, and he swears, even if he comes and he's moida later, he still will not bring an Hasham Gezelis. However, Abaye asked Rabbi the following question. What if the claim is that you are mafata my daughter, you were ma'anis my daughter, and I dragged you to the Torah and they already passed that you owe me the money. So now they sort of made the knas into mammon because they've already issued a judgment that you owe me the money. And I'm asking you to come pay me. And Reuven says, no, the whole thing that you just said is fabricated. I wasn't manish your daughter. You didn't drag me to Bezdin. They never machayiv me. So there already, it's more mamashishtik. There's more of a din moment. And then Reuven says, you know what? You are right. You are right. So the question is, there would Reuven have to bring an Hasham Gezelos? Because now when he made the denial, it was already post when Bezdin had already passed him that he's chayiv that payment. At that point, Haidah wouldn't have helped anymore. So what would it be that law? So according to Reb Shimon, the question was according to Reb Shimon because he was the one who told us earlier that if it's a knas, it would be better. So Zok to Gemara, what did he paskin? He paskin Omarlei Mammon Hava. It's considered mammon. Once Bezdin issued a psak that this person is mechuyev knas, it's a mum. It's already a mammon, and it's like any other mammon that's coming to somebody. And therefore, if it's denied and it's sworn about, there'll be a chiyuv of Hasham Gezelos. That was the halacha that we brought down. The problem is the Gemara had proven that according to Reb Shimon, even if there was already Hamad Bedin, Reb Shimon holds you still don't make a shvua. And the reason why you don't make a shvua, Zok Reb Shimon, is because the pasuk that talks about the carbon shvua is very specific as to what type of offenses lead to a carbon shvua. because it says Vakichash Bamisai, and then there's a list of what type of offenses. Pikadain, Sisumisyad, Gozo, Oishek, all of these things which were our moment from day one. It's when someone takes something from me, I want it back. Motzaveda, these are the items that you could make a shvuas that lead to the Hasham Gzelos if you swore about. Not anything that started off as a knas. So yesterday, Chai and Fear asked me when we were on Amud Beis, how do you see anything from the word Vekichesh? And I said, I don't know, which is Amaratzis. It's very simple. It's not the word Vekichesh, it's an extra word. It's because of this Gemara here. Vekichesh, the Vekichesh, the denying with a shua that leads to the Hasham Gezelos are only on items similar to those listed in the pasuk, where the pasuk discusses the Vekichesh, and those are only items of mammon, not items of knas. Even though now they're mammon already, because Bezin Paskin, but they were originated with a knas. Those are not things that will trigger a carbon shvur or an Hasham Gezelos. So because of that, the Rabbah had to retract, and Rabbah had to say, in fact, according to Reb Shimon, there would not be a carbon shvua. There would not be a carbon shvua for someone who went and told Reuben, "Anasas biti," and you already had Amad Bedin, and he denied it, and then he swore, and then he agreed that he in fact did do all that. There would not be a carbon shvua according to Reb Shimon, and the Rabbah had to retract. But Rabbah did say that something does change after Amad Bedin. So Rabbah said, all I meant about that changes about by Hamad Bedin is that now it's his, and therefore he could be moirishit to his children. That's all he meant. All I meant is Mamanahava Loirisha Labanov. That's all I meant, said Rabbah. And on that, the Gemara further clarified and said that's by every other knas, like Kefil and Dal Behei, every other knas, Shloshim Shalevid, any other knas that's mentioned in the Torah, once there's a Hamad Bedin, you still won't be Mechuyev Hasham Gzelos, but it's yours, so that if you die, your children will yarshin it. The only exception to that rule is Knas, because according to Reb Shimon, Knas is even less than that. Because according to Reb Shimon, the Knas is not considered the father's until the cash comes into his hand. And Rabbah said a very big chiddush. Rabbah said it's not a din in the Knas of Onyas Hamafuta, because it only applies to the father. It's not the father's unless it's in the father's hand. However, what if the father's not getting the knas? For instance, his daughter is already a boigers, so the knas is payable to her. That knas, if there's hamad bedin, we consider it hers already, even though it didn't reach her hand. So the chiddush of the Rabbah of Reb Shimon by knas of Ananias of the Mafata is if it's payable to the father directly from the perpetrator, then it's not the father's unless it actually shows up in the father's hand. But if the knas is going to be payable to the daughter, well then the moment Bezdin Paskin that there's a chi of knas, it's the daughter's already. And therefore if the daughter dies, her father will yarshin her. And if his father dies, then the brothers will yarshin the father. So if you wanted to think of an unusual case where the father will get knas, even though it didn't reach his hand, is if he didn't get it directly from the perpetrator, rather if it was payable to his daughter because she became a boigris, and then she died, then the father would yarshin. And that's what we concluded with on Wednesday yesterday. So we have another kasha on where we're holding. Reb Shimon Poiter, Reb Shimon says that you're potter from knas, she'enoi mishalom knas al piyatzim, because you don't pay knas al piyatzim. So let's go back to see the words of Reb Shimon that we are referring to, and it's referring to a case of someone Tnan Hosam anastu pitisas biti, who I'm loy anasti veloy pitisi mashpi achani. I'm making you swear to your denial. Vomer amen. V'achal hayda chayiv d'rabbanan hold your chayiv. Reb Shimon Poiter. Why? She'enei mishal knas al piyatzim. Reb Shimon says you're potter because you don't pay a knas if you're being moida yourself. So let's see what the Gemara says over here on that brayso. Eisvei, fragt the Gemara. Shimon Poiter, why she'enim yishalom knas al piatzvei? Zog the Gemara. Time lo yamad bedin. Based on what we're saying now, this only applies when there's part of a carbon shvua, even for oynis and mefata, if there was no hamad bedin. Ha'amad bedin, if there was a hamad bedin, the mishalom al piatzvei. Once there's a hamad bedin, you can no longer say moide beknas potter, because the chiyuv was already established in Bezdin. So at that point, if Reuven was mechuyev to pay the knas because he already had a mother bedin, and then they moved to a different country, to a different place, and Reuven comes to Bezdin and says, "I owe the knas." You don't say moed b'knas pater, because it's already after he was convicted. It was already after Bezdin paskin that he was mechuyev the knas. Then his haidah doesn't help anymore. So ha'amad bedin the mishal mal piatzmoy carbon shvua nami mechayev. You should be chayev a carbon shvua. Now, up until this point, we've reached a conclusion because of the various rayos that were brought that everybody agrees that if there was ha'amad bedin, there would be a din carbon shvua. However, we learned until now in Reb Shimon that anything that started off from a knas, which means even oynis and mefata, where there was already hamad bedin, even though now it is a din moment, but it started from a knas, that's what originated the chiyuv. There Reb Shimon holds also there's no din carbon shvua. But if you're medayik in this brisa, it seems that once there's hamad bedin, there would be a carbon shvua. So that's a stira. We know Reb Shimon himself holds there's no carbon shvua even if there was a hamad bedin, because the source of this chiyuv was from a knas, yet we have a dik here from the brisa. The Reb Shimon seems to indicate that if there was a hamad bedin, there would be a carbon shvua. That's a stira. Zok to Gemara, Reb Shimon in this brisa that we just quoted is not expressing his own opinion. He's just making an argument to the Rabbanan. Reb Shimon l'devreim de Rabbanan ka'amar lahu. He's arguing on the Rabbanan and he's making an argument to them as follows. Lididi, according to me, af al gav da'amad bedin rachmana patre, even though there was already a hamad bedin and now it's a moment, and he denies it, he would still be part from a carbon shua. Why? Mi v'kichesh, because v'kichesh tells us, according to Reb Shimon, that even though I'm denying a chiyuv mammon, but since the chiyuv mammon only came because it was once a knas that was solidified into a chiyuv mammon after the psak din, there's still no din carbon shvua on such monies. According to you Rabbanon, who hold that in fact there would be a carbon shvua in such a case, at least agree with me, Rabbanon, that when the original case had not yet been paskened in Bezdin, meaning we never were machayim yet with a knas, and the victim approaches the perpetrator and says, "Anastas biti," PT says biti, and he denies it, and then he's made at least agreeing with me over there that there's no carbon shvua, because there it's pure knas. There it had not yet been solidified in Bezdin. And umaydiv knas potter, and someone who's moed knas is potter, and really that's what this person is doing, because they were never yet mechayiv in Bezdin, so he shouldn't have to pay a carbon shvua. The Rabbanon Tzavri, and the Rabbanon respond, ki katava boishes upegam katav. He's mourning boishes and pegam. So it's mourning. So now we have a whole new shaila over here. Someone goes over to somebody else and says, "Onastas biti." What is he actually asking for? What is this conversation about? Is he asking for the knas? And then, in fact, if the person denies it and swears, and then agrees later, there was no hamad bedin yet, there shouldn't be a chiyuv carbon shvua. But maybe that's not what he has in mind at all. Maybe when someone's accusing somebody of anastas biti, maybe what he's not asking for is the knas. Maybe what he's asking for is the moment. We already established this tsar, this boishas, this pagam. That's not a knas. That's moment. Maybe that's what he's asking for, and that's what the Rabbanan holds. When someone goes over to somebody else and says anastas biti, he's not asking for the knas. He's asking for the tsar, the boishas, and the pagam, and that, of course, is regular moment. And of course, there's a carbon shvu on it. So so then what is the actual machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan? And Reb Shimon Savar, that when I go to somebody and say, Nasas Biti, I'm not interested in the mammon. I'm interested in the knas. Why? Because L'shavik Inish Midi the kids, with Tava Midi the kids. If I'm asking somebody for money, I'm not going to ask him for a payment that's not yet clear how much it should be. There's an assessment required to determine the tsar. There's an assessment required to determine the boshers of the gam. I want to ask you something for money that's clear. 50 shkolim is guaranteed. That's what I'm asking for. So therefore, this question here is all about knas, and therefore there will be no korban shvuah. For abundance avri, loy shavik inish midi the chimoidi be loy mifter v'tava midi the chimoidi be mifter. Why would I go ask him to pay me knas if I know that all he has to do is be moed and he'll be potter from it? So if I'm making a claim against him, I'm going to make a claim against him for something that he'll for sure have to pay me no matter what. So therefore, my claim is a claim of mammon. Your denial is a denial of mammon. Your shvu is a shvu of mammon, and therefore you could bring an nesham zelis.
I understand why it has to be mutually exclusive. I'm suing you for everything. I'm suing you for the knas. I'm suing you for nezek and for tsar and the whole bit. Why is it exclusionary? Why would all of a sudden he doesn't? Nezek, tsar, ripu, boshim, v'sheves.
That's an excellent question. Maybe I'm asking for both. Maybe I'm asking for both.
I am asking. I'm going to ask for everything.
So let's look at Rashi.
Isn't he asking whatever is coming to him?
But that's what Akiva is asking. So let's see Rashi. Umoide b'knas potter, b'arei loy tavoi elo knas levado. According to Reb Shimon, I'm not even asking you for a moment. All I'm asking you is for knas. The olav nishpa, and on that you're swearing, and that is what he swore about. So Reb Shimon, the Rabbanan hold exactly like what you hold. I'm asking for everything. So included in my claim is moment, therefore included in your denial and your shvuah is moment, so it's logical that you should pay a korban shvuah. Reb Shimon holds, whenever someone makes a demand, he's never referring to something that it's not clear how much money it is. If I'm saying you owe me money, I'm only going to claim from you, the conversation is only going to be about what's clear and what's determined already the amount.
Really?
That's how Reb Shimon holds. That's what Reb Shimon holds. So you're asking me a person wants it all.
I don't know how much the net tsar is going to be.
Right, that's why I'm not making a claim. When I'm saying you owe me, I need an amount. How much you owe me? I'm not going to go over and say you owe me money. I'm not sure how much.
Taking you to base even the knas.
This is not a business. This is not a business. This is a guy on the street.
But no one's going to pay a knas without basing telling them that you have to pay it.
In the Chanami.
So you're going to go to court.
So that's exactly what the Rabbanan is saying. No one's going to pay a knas without bezdin, and therefore that's not what he's asking for, because that needs bezdin, and you could be moida and you won't even be chay. That exactly the tanya that you're expressing is precisely the tanya of the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan both times. The Rabbanan is saying, I'm not going to ask for. My focus isn't in the knas. It's also the moment. The Reb Shimon says it's only the knas. In order to be part of from korban shvuah, it has to be exclusive of the knas. Once there's any moment mixed in here as well, right away it's like every other type of damage which you'd be chayiv korban shvuah for. So just to see where all the chips fall, let's think about this. According to Reb Shimon, say if there was hamad b'din, say if there was not hamad b'din, there would be no chiyuv for korban shvuah, because we say the claim is only about the knas, and even if it became moment because there was hamad b'din, since the chiyuv only came from a knas, there's no din of korban shvuah, because the kichesh is only referring to mammon, things that were mammon originally. The Rabbanan say whether or not there was hamad b'din, you'd be chayiv a korban shvuah. If there was hamad b'din, even the knas became mammon. And if there was no hamad b'din, well then my taina, our argument, our discussion, the shvuah is about the mammon part, about the nezek tsar and the boishes, which is mammon, and it's not about the knas, or not only about the knas. So that is the machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. It's a twofold machlokes, and there's actually two separate things going on in the machlokes. The machlokes is about whether or not there could be a din korban shvuah for a fine that originated with the knas, and B is what is a person thinking when he's making a claim? Is he thinking only about the mammon, or is he thinking only about the knas? Or to rephrase it, is he thinking only about the knas, or is he also referring to the mammon? Ravina asked a question of Reb Sheshes. Bas hanizoynos mina'ach. Now we know the halacha is while a girl is being supported by her father is entitled to anything that she produces. Her father is entitled to keep a mitzvah that she finds, and a father is entitled to keep any salary, any pay that she earns. Well, what if the father dies, and in the Kesubos there's a t'nai, and it says that the girls will have a right to support themselves, to sustain themselves off of the Kesubos, off of my estate, until they remarry, or until they marry, that is. So there's such a t'nai Kesubos. Rashi says the lashon that's written in the Kesubos is v'nin nukvin the yahava lechiminoi, any female children that you have, inun yahin yasvin bevesi, they will sit in my household even after I die, umitzanen menichsi, and they'll be able to get supported from my estate until they will be married off. So even after one dies, these girls can take from the estate, meaning they're eating away from money that would have been yarshened by the boys. So Ravina wanted to know from Reb Sheshes, if you have a Yosoima who's now eating off the estate, who owns their work? We know when their father was alive, their father gets that. But when their father is no longer alive, and now they're eating off the estate, who gets the Ma'aseh? Do you say, b'makamaf kaimi, these boys who yarshin the estate are now in the shoes of their father, and therefore just like when the father's alive and the father's supporting his daughters, he keeps anything they produce, so too the brother should keep anything that these girls produce. Maybe they're different than the father. Why? The father is giving them his own money. If the father is giving them his own money, yes, he's entitled to take their ma'asedayim. Here, they're not being supported by the brothers, really. They're really being supported by the estate. And Rashi says more. A father is mechuyev to support his daughter. So therefore, he gets their ma'asedayim. But the boys aren't supporting their daughter because of a personal chiyuv. It's only because there's a t'nai in the Kesubos. There's a t'nai in the Kesubos that lets them take. Maybe that's not the same thing that's mechayev the father, and therefore maybe they would not be entitled to the ma'aseh yadayim. Omar lei, so Reb Sheshes responded, Tinisua, we actually have a brisa that will answer your question. It says almana nizonis v'nichse yisayim. The almana also, it's niksai Kesubos, that the almana gets to support herself off the estate. It says in the Kesubos, Im tehei, at tehei, you, my wife, teyosve bevesi, will sit in my household, umitzina menichsi, and you will be able to support yourself from my estate. Kol yimei meger alma, as long as you're an almana and you haven't remarried. So it says almana is on nichsi yisayim, and there it's ma'aseh shalahen. They get to keep her ma'aseh yisayim. So by the same token, when the daughters live off the estate, the brothers, the estate should also be able to take the ma'aseh yisayim. There's a very big difference. The almana, he doesn't want her to get rich off him. You're going to take your sustenance from my estate, you're going to pay back your ma'aseh yisayim. It's tit for tat. But Bita, his daughter, he forgives more than he does his almana. I got to buy you a house anyway. You know what? I'll support you, and you'll keep whatever you earn, and you'll put it away, and you'll be able to have a down payment on a house. So what are you saying? Remember, are you saying that a person cares more about his daughter than his almana? Because his daughter, he's going to let her take money from the estate and keep whatever she earns, but the almana not? I'm going to show you that it's exactly the opposite. He cares more for the almana than for his daughter. Because Reb Avrum, Reb Yosy, also almana etzel abbas, kibas beitel achin, kibas eitel achin b'nechasim mu'atim. You treat the almana in regards to her daughter just like you would treat the daughter in regards to the brothers, when there's not enough money to support them all together. And what happens if there's no almana? There's just daughters and sons, and there's not enough money for the sons and the daughters to live off the estate. Who's the money belong to? It really belongs to the sons, because they're the arshim. The daughter's only getting sustenance from the estate because it's not ksuba. So who would have precedence? Who would get that money? Ma habas eitzel achin. The loch is habas nizonis. The daughter gets first rights to the money, and they get to live off the money. Achin, what about the brothers? Yishalu al apsachim. They have to go shnor. They don't get, even though technically it's theirs, they're in second position to get it. First, their sisters have to get support. No one ever thought that there's an option that maybe they should get a job, but it doesn't say that. It's either you live off the estate or you shall upsachim. It must be speaking about children that are young. Af almana etzelabas. So too, if there's not enough money to support the almana and the daughter, who gets precedence? Almana nizanis v'abas tishalal upsachim. So you see clearly here that the Tanakh Suba says that the almana should be first, meaning the husband is more concerned about the welfare of his almana, less so about his daughters. Yet when it comes to Ma'aseh Yadayim, you're arguing that the almanos Ma'aseh Yadayim go to the estate, yet the Ma'aseh Yadayim of the daughter won't go to the estate. So yeah, it's not a contradiction. Le'inin zelusa, when it's a question of humiliation, having to knock on doors for survival, almanasa yadifale. He concerned that his almana should be in a respectable position, not have to lower himself to knock on doors. He'd rather let his daughter knock on doors than his almana knock on doors. But linar vach, when it's a question of getting rich off him, bita yadifale. I want my almana to be in a respectable position, but not that she should get rich off the estate. My daughter, I want her to get rich because I want her to build a future. So therefore, it's not a steer that in some ways the almana is better taken care of, and in some ways the daughter is better taken care of. Much of Rabbi Yosy. Very good, very good. Much of Rabbi Yosy. Ma'aseh yadeha u'metziyasa. Her Ma'aseh Yadayim and whatever she finds, afal pi sheloi gavsa, even if she has not yet collected it. So she worked for a week and had not yet received her paycheck. So it's not in her hand yet. Nevertheless, Mesa'av, if the father dies, Harein Shalachim belongs to the brothers. So you look at it to such an extent that the father owns it, that he could be Morisha to his brothers. To his sons. So let's look at this. Time of the Bechayayah. We're talking about Ma'aseh Yadayim that she earned while the father was alive. And it's only those Ma'aseh Yadayim being discussed in the Brisa that the father owns, and therefore he's Morisha to his sons. But if there's money that she earned after the father died, obviously she keeps it herself, because the Brisa is only discussing Ma'aseh Yadayim that were earned while the father was alive. Anything that is earned after the father was alive, she'll keep. So, my love, what is the case that we're discussing here, where the Brisa said, Ma'aseh Yadayim Tziyasa, go to the father? My love, b'ni zaynis. It's speaking even if she's going to be relying on the estate to survive. And you see here, nevertheless, she keeps her Ma'aseh Yadayim. So you have a right to our Shaila that she keeps her Ma'aseh Yadayim. Like Rav Shei says. Zakta Gemara, loy, b'she'ein nizaynis. It's speaking where she was not nizaynis. Where she was not nizaynis, that's when she would keep her own Ma'aseh Yadayim. But if she was nizaynis, she would not keep her Ma'aseh Yadayim. Faith Gemara, b'she'ein nizaynis, my lamemra. What is the chiddush? What is the chiddush of this brisa that if she's not taking money from the estate, she doesn't have to give her Ma'aseh Yadayim to the estate? Yet if she's not taking money from her father, she still has to give her Ma'aseh Yadayim to her father. Zok Gemara, you cannot say this is the case. My lamemra. You cannot suggest that a girl who is not taking money from her father for support, her father is still entitled to her Ma'aseh Yadayim. You cannot say that. You know why? Because even if you hold that a person can tell his Evet Knaini, who he is normally responsible to support, but he could tell his Evet Knaini, Asay imi, you must give me whatever you produce, but I'm not feeding you. Someone could do that to his Evet Knaini. Might not be such a good move because his Evet Knaini might not survive, but he could do that halachically. He could force the Evet Knaini to give him the Mais Yadayim. Yet he doesn't have to give any money to the Evet Knaini to survive. Even if you could do such a thing, that only applies to an Evet Knaini. The like Siv Amcha, he's not part of your nation. Aval Evet Ivri, the Siv Amcha, loy, you wouldn't be able to. So if you have an Evet Ivri, you can't tell the Evet Ivri, whatever you work, whatever you produce is mine, and I'm not going to support you. You have to support him. So if that's how the Torah treats an Evet Ivri who's not even related to you, surely someone's daughter, if he is not going to support her, he will not be entitled to her Ma'aseh Yadayim. So you cannot say that this bride is speaking about any of the Zionis. You have to say the bride is speaking about the Zionis, because only if he's supporting her, only then is he entitled to her Ma'aseh Yadayim. And even there, when she's being the Zionis, when it comes to the estate, she gets to keep her own Ma'aseh Yadayim, even though she is being supported by the estate. And that's the Gemara's kasha. Amar Rabbi Bar Ula, Zogt Rabbi Bar Ula, Teretz. Loi Nitzrucha, the whole Chiddush of this brisa is Ela Lahadafa. It's Taka speaking when she was Einin Nizonis. And that's why she's not getting. So you're going to ask if it's Einin Nizonis, why is it that the father gets the Ma'aseh Yadayim? In fact, the father does not get the Ma'aseh Yadayim. What the brisa is discussing here that goes to the father is the Hadafa, is what she earned that's worth more than her Mizonis. Whatever her Mizonis would have been worth, let's say her Mizonis are worth $500 a week. So for $500 a week that she earns, she surely gets to keep that. But what if she earns $800 a week, but her Mizonis is only $500? That $300 will still go to the father. And that's what the brisa is talking about. That $300 will go to the father, but once the father dies, it will not go to the estate. So Zok the Gemara, Amar Rava, Gaver Rabbi Reb Yosef, Lo Yoda, the Ika Dafa, the Kamosh of Tiyofta. Let's see what happened over here. Rabbi Yosef wanted to ask a kasha on Reb Shesh's psak. Reb Shesh's paskin for us earlier. Reb Shesh's paskin for us earlier that the estate is not entitled to the Ma'aseh Yadayim. That's what the Reb Shesh's paskin. Right? Let's go to the Gemara. They asked Reb Sheshes, there's a bas in Rosh Menachem, who gets the Ma'aseh Yadayim? And what did he answer? Amalei to Nisua, he wanted to bring a raya from this brisa that the daughter gets to keep her own Ma'aseh Yadayim, that the estate is not entitled to Ma'aseh Yadayim, because he said, Bitoi, I'm sorry, he said, Ma'aseh Yadayim shalahed. Reb Sheshes wanted to paskin that if this daughter is taking money from the estate, then whatever she earns goes to the estate. That's what Reb Sheshes paskin. The money goes to the estate. And Reb Yosy asked a kasha, or Reb Yosef asked a kasha on Reb Sheshes. How could you say that the estate gets the money? Here you see that the estate doesn't get the money after the father died. And the Gemara deflected it and said it's not speaking about the money that's connected to Mizonis, it's discussing the money that's over and above the Mizonis. So, Frek the Gemara, is it possible that Rabbi Yosef, who's such a great man, would have not asked a good kasha, would have not realized that there's hadafa, and maybe that's what this brisa is referring to? So, therefore, it's hard to argue that this is pshat in the brisa, because if in fact this is pshat in the brisa is only discussing the hadafa, Rabbi Yosef wouldn't have made such a mistake. Ella, Amar Rava, Rabbi Yosef understood this brisa better than we did, and in fact, he was able to extract a very good raya from this brisa. And this is the raya that Rabbi Yosef extracted. Amar Rava, Rabbi Yosef masnisa gufa kashale. He had a problem with the wording of the brisa. What does it say? The katani ma'aseh yodea u'mitzias. It's talking about a girl whose ma'aseh yadayim go to the father, and it also says that her mitzias, anything she finds, will go to the father. But what is the lashon of Brisa? It says, "Ma'aseh yadayim mitziyasa, af al pi shaloi gofsa," even though she didn't collect it yet. So it makes sense to say af al pi shaloi gofsa on her paycheck. She already worked, but she didn't get her paycheck yet. But mitziyasa, how could you say af al pi shaloi gofsa? A mitziyah you don't get from anybody. A mitziyah she already picked up. So the word af al pi shaloi gofsa described in the Brisa doesn't make sense regarding the case of mitziyasa. So mitziyasa miman gavi. Who is she collecting her mitziyah from? Mitziyah means by definition that she already found it. So the Brisa doesn't make sense if you read it at face value. Ma'aseyada u'mitziyasa af al pi shaloi gofsa me'esav harein shalach. So they belong to the father. What does it mean af al pi shaloi gofsa? Zok Rabbi Yosef, it must be that the Tana is trying to teach us another message. Elalaf hachi gomer ma'aseh yadayim k'mitziyasa. We treat her ma'aseh yadayim, her earnings, just like something that she found. Ma mitziyasa v'chaya ya'av la'av la'achar misav la'atzma. This whole halacha that the father gets her mitziyas, that's exclusively applying to her father. It does not apply to the estate. So even if you have a discussion whether or not the estate gets her ma'aseh yadayim, the estate surely does not get her mitziyas. So just like the mitziyah only belongs to the father when the father is alive. Once the father is no longer alive, she keeps her own mitziyah. Af ma'aseh yadayim nami bechaya av la'av la'achar misas av la'atzma shma minah. So that was Reb Yosef's raya. Reb Yosef's raya was from the fact that the Tana compared the two. The Tana is saying that mitziyasa has the same status as ma'aseh yadayim, and therefore, just like the mitziyah, after her father dies, the estate has no claim whatsoever on something that she finds. So too, the Tana is teaching us that the estate has no claim on any earnings that this woman has when the father passes away. So you have a raya. So you have a raya against Reb Sheshes. Reb Sheshes wanted to say that the estate gets to keep whatever this almana as well as this Yosy produces. But from this price, it seems to indicate that the estate does not get to keep what this Yosy produces. So we have a machlokes basically between Reb Sheshes and Reb Yosef. Shma mina. Itmanami Omar Bidam Arav. Bas Hanizonish Menachem. A Yosy who is living off the estate. Ma'aseh yadayim atzma. She keeps her own ma'aseh yadayim. This is in support of Reb Yosef. This is in disagreement with Reb Sheshes. Amar B'kana, my timer, it says regarding a Nevet Knani, you will give over in Yerusha your avodim from generation to generation. Your rights in an Evet you pass down from generation to generation. But you're not passing down your rights that you have to your daughters, ma'aseh yadayim, that is not being passed down to your children. And therefore, Margaret teaches us, any rights that a man has in his daughter does not get passed down to the son. His son cannot marry off his daughter. His son is not entitled to the ma'aseh yadayim of his daughter. Once again, this is following the shita of Reb Yosef. Reb Sheshes paskin that the son does get the ma'aseh yadayim. Machkav Rabba. The Ema, who said that when it says she'ein adam marish chus bita levnoi, who said that that's referring to her ma'aseh yadayim, and therefore it's a kash in Reb Sheshes. So Rabba is coming to the defense of Reb Sheshes. You don't see from this price against Reb Sheshes because the aim of a pito yabasu knosois bechavolos hakos medaber. Maybe when the Torah you're doing this diak she'ein adam marish chus bita levnoi, that doesn't necessarily mean every single schus he has. Maybe it only means these items on the list, but maybe it doesn't include ma'aseh yadayim. V'chein taner Rab Chanina bepito yabas uknosois bechavolos hakos medaber. So if that's the case, you don't have a raya from here that the estate doesn't keep her ma'aseh yadayim, because maybe when the Brisa says that the schlusim that the father has don't pass down to the children is referring to other things, but not ma'aseh yadayim. Anyway, chavolos the father doesn't get. So what do you mean he doesn't pass it down to her? A chavola is tzar the gufa, and Rashi says v'tzar le'zocher le'rachman alav. A father never gets tzar unless there's nezek involved. If you hurt somebody diktana, you have to make some type of trust fund for them so that they will benefit from it later. But at the end of the day, you see that when it comes to tsar the guf, the father's never entitled to. What type of tsar the gufin is? It's a pizza b'fanel. It's when he wounded her face, where there's nezek involved. Where there's nezek involved, there for sure the payment will go to the father. Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rab Masna, Amar Rav, Amar Lo, Amar Rab Zera, Amar Rabbi Zera. So was he called Rabbi Zera or was he called Rabbi Zera? Rabbi Zera, Amar Rab Masna, Amar Rav. And Rashi tells us that he was called Rav Zera when he was in Bavel before he got smicha, and when he got smicha, he was called Rabbi Zera. And the question here is, this halacha, did Reb Zera say it over while he was still in Bavel, or did Rabbi Zera set it over while he was in Yisrael after he got smicha? And he said, Bas hanizonis v'na'achin ma'aseh yodel atzma. She gets to keep her own ma'aseh yodayim, which is the shita of Rabbi Yosef. The chsiv is nachalta mosel levnechem acharechem, oisam levnechem, v'loy b'noisechem levnechem, magid sheina the morish chusbitoy levnoy. Just like we just said, Amalei avimai bar papi, shkoid amra. You know who said this halacha? Someone who we refer to as shkoid. Who is shkoid? Shkoid manu. It's Shmuel. And Rashi says shkoid means to apply yourself. Because Shmuel, we know, we always pass him like him in Dinei Mominus, because he applies himself to understand thoroughly the situation to paskin with clarity. And Shmuel paskins here that Eina de Morish, meaning the estate wouldn't keep her Ma'aseh Yadayim. Harav Amr, we just quoted it from Rav. Both Rav and Shmuel agree. Both Rav and Shmuel agree that the estate will not get the Ma'aseh Yadayim of a Yosayim. Amar Marbar Amemel Ravashi, Hachi Amri Nardoi. This is what they said in Nardah. So in Nardah they paskin that the estate does get the Ma'aseh Yadayim of the Yosayim. Ravashi Amar Hilchazak Avos the Rav. Hilchazak Avos the Rav. Allah Chalamaysa, we pass like Rav, who says that the estate does not get the Ma'aseh Yadayim of a Yisayma who is living off the estate, but even though Reb Sheshes argues. Beautiful. Let's take us to the Mishnah. Let's hop around the second half of the daf. It's a little late, but we'll go fast. Hama'ayr says Bitai. Someone made kedushin for his daughter, Vigirsha, and then she was divorced. Irsa, again, he married her off a second time. V'nis Armala, the second time she became an Almana. Ksubas Shaloi, the father gets the ksuba because she is still in his domain because she was never a nesua. So he gets now two ksubas off of its one daughter. He gets the first ksuba that came from her ex, and he gets the second ksuba that came from her late husband. How about his sia? What if she made nesuin and then the girsha, or his sia they made nesuin and then with the armala? Their ksubas shalah, she gets to keep her own ksuba because once she's in the nesua, her father no longer has reshus on her. The first ksuba, the father will still get. Amrullah, and the Gemara is going to explain why. Amrullah, they told him, I'm sorry, there is no ksuba because she was already married off of Nesuin. And the Gemara is going to say, the shaila is, do you look at when it becomes payable and then she's in the Nesuah already? Or do you look at when it was first contracted, which happened before she became a Nesuah? Zok the Gemara. Time to see, it's funny that the Mishnah picks a case where once she lost her husband through death and once she lost her husband through gerushin. Why didn't the Mishnah pick a case where the same thing happened? Either both husbands divorced her or both husbands died. Why didn't you see that? Tami deceiving Gersha, deceiving this Amala. Of this Amala trace himne, the Tana didn't want to pick a case where she lost her husband twice. Why? Because that would lead to a situation where she's no longer allowed to remarry, because our Tana holds that after killing two husbands, so to speak, she's a katlanis and she's not allowed to marry a third time. And the Tana doesn't even want to discuss cases that lead to such sadness. Agav Urche, the Tana is telling us that he passes like Rebbe, that if a woman loses two husbands, she can no longer get married, and therefore the Tana doesn't even want to discuss such a case. My time in Yehuda, why should the father get the first ksuba? When the husband died, when the husband divorced her, she was in the suah at that point, and she was no longer in the domain of her father. So Rabbi Yosef where does the chiyuv ksuba come? It's triggered at the erison. At the erison, she still was in his domain. Therefore, he's entitled to the ksuba of the first marriage. Mosav Rabba. Rabba has a kasha. The The first ksuba belongs to the father. But umoidir Rabbi Yehuda b'ma'aris esbitay kishiktana ubagra. What if someone was ma'aris his daughter? He accepted kedushin for his daughter when she was a ktana, when he still had rights over her. Ubagra, and in the engagement, so to speak, after the kedushin, before the nesuin, she became a bageris, where she's no longer her items are no longer belonging to her father. And the nesuin occurred after she was already a gedola. She'ein lavi reshus ba. There, the father doesn't get the ksuba. If you're telling me that at the erison he got the ksuba already, well then hachanami leima hoyel mishas erison zacha be'enaav. So in this case as well, Rabbi Yehuda should hold that the father is entitled to the ksuba. If you want to understand what Rabbi Yehuda said, you need to explain it differently. Rabbi Yosef Dami Tervayu hoyel uver shusay nichtovin umigva. I'm sorry. Since it was written up, Rashi, the ksuba rishona, the first ksuba was written up before the nesuin. It was written up before she became a nesua, when she was still in his rishus, and she was still a ktana. The hilchach bagra koidim nesuin. If she became a begeris before the nesuin, it's loy nichtev rishusay. Then it was not written in his rishus. So if she never became a begeris, she just became a nesua. When was the ksuba written up? It was written up before she became a nesua. Therefore, the father gets to keep it. But if she became, if she became a begeris before it was written up, then when it was written up, it's hers already.
Yes. What did it say in the ksuba? I'm going to, if in case of divorce, I'm ready to give your father 200 kesef. You don't know when the gerushin is going to take place.
That's correct. But the chiyuv already came. The fields, his nechasim, already meshubed from the time that it was written. From the time of the fields already meshubed from the time it was written. So the shibud came
5 years later.
That's right. But the shibud came when the father was in control, so he gets it. That's Rabbi Yehuda's argument.
Okay.
So the question is, when actually do we say the karkois are mishubatim? From at what point do the karkois become meshubed to the woman to be able to collect from anything that she sold? Amar Rav Huna, Mana u'Masayim in the Erison. The base ksuba of Mana and Masayim, she can actually go back and collect any fields that her husband sold after the Erison already. So therefore, in fact, we say that at the Erison it was chal already. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. The toisvis, but if there's any extra that a person added to the ksuba for his own honor, min asuin, that chiyuv only comes at the nasuin, and therefore the father wouldn't get that. Rabasi Amar, echad zeh ve'echad zeh b'nin nasuin. All of the ksuba you can only go back and collect from lukuchais only after the nasuin. Frank the Gemara, Ami Amar Abhuna Havi. Did Abhuna actually say this? We learned a machlokes. What if she pulled 2 ksubas on her husband? He divorces her and she pulls 2 ksubas. One says that he only gives her 200. And one that says 300. So of course the one that she would prefer is the 300. She gets more money. But one of them was written earlier. The date on the ksuba of Masayim is much earlier than the date on the ksuba of Shalosh Me'os. And by taking the ksuba of the Shalosh Me'os, she's giving up the right to collect fields that were sold before that point. If she's collecting Masayim, she's saying my ksuba was Masayim, and this is the real ksuba, then she has the right to collect from the Kuchais who even purchased way back when, from the date written on the first star. But Shalosh Me'os, if she wants to collect 300 because she wants to say the second star is valid, well then Goyim is on Sheni. Then she can collect 300, but only from available properties that were not sold yet by that date. V'misa, but if you hold that you split up the main ksuba from the Messiah, because that's what we said earlier, that the main ksuba, she muns from the Shas Erison, and the Toisvish, she muns from the Shas Nesuin. Well, here too, Tigvi Messiah is man rishon. Let's say that the Messiah is the base ksuba, and that's chal mizaman rishon. Umeya, and the last 100 is mizman sheni. And let's say that the first ksuba is what he wrote her originally, and by the second ksuba he was machayiv himself an extra 100. But the original 200 she's already entitled to from an earlier date. Frag the Gemara, why say that? Let her get 500. Let her say that the first ksuba was exclusively the base ksuba, and the extra 3 isn't the combined total. The extra 3 maybe is the extra toisvus. Let her get 500. Zok to Gemara, Kula Masai Mizman Rishon. The first 200 should be from the Zman Rishon, because that was the original ksuba, which is Chalat Eresin, and Klas Meya Mizman Sheni. My time. Why is no one even considering that you can collect fully from both these ksubas, all 500? Normally, when someone's giving extra money, he's going to write in the star, I'm giving you an extra X dollars. It didn't say that in the second star of 300. I'm giving you an extra 300. He's just writing the ksubas 300. So that shows us that. So that shows us as follows. So obviously, even like Sazavlas, Savisi, Vasivalach, Klasmeya, Amasayim, Harik Amerle. What he really means to say in the second star of 300 is Imizman Rishon Gavias, if you want to go back to take from the beginning Gavi Masayim, you'll only get 200, like the first tuba. Imizman Sheni Gavias, Gavi Klasmeya. But if you're willing to post-date the star, then you can have the extra 100 that I'm going to add. Okay, let's stop here, and even though we're in the middle of a Shakla V'Tarya, we'll continue tomorrow, but at least we're on time with the daf.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.